Before you even start up a business, you need to understand the industry that you want to venture into. You actually have to make an analysis of the industry. For example, if you want to venture into consultation business, there is need of you doing an analysis, studying over that particular field, over that particular industry, for you to have a proper understanding, then be able to look at your target market. Okay, because there are a number of people, they just come up with an idea, but it's not sharpened, it's not refined. You understand? It's not actually refined. You don't even understand your target market. You just have the product, but you don't really understand the target market. Then the other thing you should understand again is there are two sets. There is value, and then there's also value that is needed. You understand? There are certain people that are valuable, but at the end of the day, that value is not needed. So you need to really make a research regarding the target market. Then you come up with the marketing strategies. So knowledge is very important before you even start up a business. So that finance does not become a problem because you become like a magnet. Sure.
Very powerful. Some of us, as long as we hear that, because we're living in this advent of load shedding and power banks are really selling, so we want to start that particular business. But Handsen puts it very clear that you might be shocked at the end of the day. But then from understanding the base for knowledge that one needs to have, I'm now coming to you, Idangie, from a journalistic point of view. Obviously, over the years, government has really created those platforms from the Constituency Development Fund, from the Citizen Economic Empowerment Fund, and so forth. But then at the same time, despite the availability of funds, we find that young businesses are really suffering, young businesses are really dying. So just explain to us how we can navigate those challenges despite maybe resources being there. Obviously some not have capital, but some do, and those kind of devastating effects. How does one navigate through that?
That's a great question. By the way, I'm seeing great potential here, but you guys have low energy here. Let's pump it up a bit, right? I want you guys to interact with me because I like interaction. Moderator, pardon me, because I feel like as a journalist, one of the things that we normally focus on when it comes to information is digging deeper into understanding what's really happening. So I'm going to give an holistic view of, I'm not going to speak as government, but because we're journalists, so we're privileged to have information on what government is implementing. So first and foremost, I like the fact that the question that was shared with my colleague here was quite important about, you need to understand, you need to grasp upon knowledge. But also, if you speak about CDF, that's Constituency Development Fund, one of the things I always say to, even in our space, is that the challenge that is coming up is that people are unable to access the fund. That's the biggest insight that has been coming from communities. No, we're unable to access funds, or it's just for political inclined individuals. Those are some of the concerns. But if you go on the ground, you will find a sad story. People are actually not pushing themselves to learn how they can actually access these funds. Therefore, channeling this ideology that some certain individuals are posing in the consumer market, that funds are hard to get. So now, how do we change the narrative? And this is where now, as young people, we need to challenge ourselves. Are we understanding this thing? Do we understand what it takes for you to access these funds, for example? Are you privy with the information? Don't just wake up because a friend said, oh, it's hard to get a Constituency Development Fund. That becomes a general statement for you. Then you're missing out. And because we're speaking about something very important as getting some liquidity to push your business, therefore it becomes your responsibility because you are the one with the vision board. You know where you want to take yourself and your business. Therefore, you know that the steps that you need to take in order to make sure that acute sense of you getting information and implementing becomes very important. There are 4 things I want to share with you before I summarize a bit. There are 4 connotations that I want you to pay attention to. If you have a book, please write it down. Number 1, on these 4 connotized steps, you have implementation, right? So the first stage down there is implementation. And then you have unification. So don't get lost. I'm going to explain. You have unification, right? And then you have communication. So communication is there. So communication, if you look at unification, it's below the margin number. So I'm going to talk about the figures a little bit later. And then you have imagination, right, which is the mind. So the top part is the biggest component that you need to focus on, which is imagination. And then communication. These two tiers can make you make a lot of money in life. Communication, imagination. But you cannot go away without implementation. So here how are you going to split? You're going to split 80% on imagination. You're going to split 10% on communication. You're going to split 5% on unification and 5% on implementation. Why am I saying so? Implementation is the average job that you get as a civil servant, getting 5,000, 6,000. Unification is a senior manager job where you get about, if you're lucky enough, 10,000 to 15,000. Communication, when you master the art of communication and you're able to lay out information properly, you're able to make about 50,000, 60,000. And then you go to imagination. Now you imagine and you implement. You imagine and you create. That gives you more value. So I think one of the things that government has put in place, CDF, right now I think what has been introduced from the small medium enterprise is the credit guarantee scheme, which is now at 851 million, which is now for this year's budget, prone to be debated upon whether it will be approved or not, but that's a lot of money for everybody to get an interest in saying, how can I benefit this and make my life better?
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. So we have just received an instruction. In order to answer a question, you're required to stand. You're required to stand. That is the instruction. Yes. So now let's go to Blessing. She's a brand influencer or strategist, if you like, strategist. So basically, your question is about just making us understand how important branding is and how it sets one business from the other apart.
Okay, and thank you so much for the question. Hello everyone, how are you doing? Okay, so answering your question, one thing that we first have to understand is we first need to know exactly what branding is. So branding is about crafting a unique identity that resonates with your customers. So for me, I look at branding as you first need to understand your personal branding first, and from the self-perception, it goes to business brand. So if you're able to get the main articulates of personal branding, it's very easy for you to also understand business branding. So personal brand or branding itself is just about coming up with an identity that resonates with your customers. So there are 4 building blocks of personal branding. One is authenticity. All these great brands that we know today, they have been in existence up to today. We can talk about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been in existence since, I don't know, but it came into existence, I think, in 1886. Coca-Cola, up to now, it's still actually making it. You know, it's still a great brand that we all know. The question is, why is Coca-Cola a great brand even up to now? There are so many brands that we can mention. So authenticity actually makes your brand or your business brand stand out. So all those great brands that we know have decided to stay very authentic. And then the other thing is distinctiveness. For you to have a great brand as a person or as a business, you have to be distinct. We have so many companies or so many businesses that are doing similar things, but what makes your business or your product stand out? One thing about marketeers or businesses is businesses attach an idea to their brand, attach an idea to their product that positions their brand. So you have to be distinct. Even when you're coming up with a business idea, or even when you want to start selling products, I mean, you want to come up with a business, it's important to ask yourself, what is going to make me different from the rest? What's going to make me different from other competitors out there? What's going to make me stand out in this particular field that I have chosen? So aside from being authentic, you have to be distinct. And the other thing is that great brands are compelling. They do command a certain attention. We can give example of Apple. You know, like Apple, the Apple company. Like there are different companies that we can mention. Great brands do compel great great attention or a certain influence. And the other thing is excellency. It's actually the fourth building block of branding. So all these great brands that we know are excellent in the way they carry things, in the way they carry themselves, in the way they carry their businesses. So if you have a business, as a young person who is in this room, it's important to ask yourself, how am I going to be excellent? For you to stand out, for you to be compelling, it's important that you become very, very excellent to what you do, because excellency speaks for you even when you're not in the room. We know Colgate. Have you observed that every toothpaste now is Colgate because of branding? Every washing powder now is Surf because of branding. So you have to really ask yourself, how best am I going to make sure that I stay excellent in this particular field, or in this particular business that I've chosen to carry on? And the other thing is, I can give an example of Amazon. Amazon is a great online retail. It has succeeded as a great online retail brand because it decided not to be good enough. You know, good is the enemy of the great. So for you to stand out in your business, it's important that you become very, very excellent in what you do. So getting it back to your question, why is it important to create a strong brand as a business or even as a person? One, it builds trust. You know, when you have a great brand, there's just the way customers trust you. There's a way you trust, you prefer a certain brand to the other, right? Like, okay, maybe I love using this hair product than the other, so you prefer it. So it builds, there's just a trust that comes with branding, because you have crafted an identity that you want different people to know you for, and that builds trust, and also your networks as well. So if you have a strong brand as a business, it will broaden your network, and it will be very easy for other businesses to recommend your business. And the other thing is, it also just builds credibility. Like, people trust you, and it will hold you credible for what you do. I think that's what I can say.